1942, a band of Polish soldiers recently released from prisons and work camps stumbled upon an unlikely mascot, a brown bear cub. Enamored with his antics and friendly personality, the troops took on the cub as one of their own. The bear grew and the war progressed. As the men ventured into combat, Wojtek the military bear served right by their sides, distinguishing himself enough to become an official part of the Polish military forces. As these Polish troops made their way out of Siberia and into Iran, they met a young shepherd. The shepherd carried with him a sack, and in that sack he kept a Syrian brown bear cub. The bear was an orphan. His mother had been killed by hunters. The playful spirit of the cub won the troops over, and they made a trade with the shepherd. The newly adopted bear left his old life to go on an adventure with Polish troopers in World War II. The fighting men gave their new friend the name Wojtek, which means joyful soldier. The bulk of the responsibilities to care for the brown bear cub fell on two men, essentially his adoptive parents, Dmytro Shaluga and Henryk Zakarowicz. Henryk, in particular, formed a close bond with the bear. In most of the films and pictures that exist of Wojtek, Henryk can always be seen nearby. Apparently, Wojtek had a helicopter parent. In the wild, a Syrian brown bear eats fruits, berries, seeds, plants, grasses, nuts, grubs, and small mammals. If particularly peckish, he will eat cultivated grains and livestock. The military was ill-equipped to care for a bear cub, so the troops made do with what they had. Wojtek was initially fed condensed milk from a bottle. But as he grew, his tastes expanded to include, well, basically anything that was available. Not a real foodie. The larger Wojtek got, the more bold he became to roam around the camp's kitchen, scrounging up a snack. In the rare moments when his military family wasn't doing military things like packing, moving, working, or fighting, Wojtek was always up for mixing it up with his human friends. Whether Wojtek was entertaining the troops or the troops were entertaining Wojtek is hard to say. In any event, he threw back beers like one of the boys. But big talk over beers was not Wojtek's style. He was a bear of action. The larger he grew, the more he enjoyed wrestling. The brown bear loved to roughhouse with men, though it was a rare soldier who was brave enough to earnestly tussle with Wojtek. No troops ever got seriously injured, but it was common for a wrestling match to end with someone's body getting scratched or someone's clothes getting shredded, and that someone was never Wojtek. Perhaps that's why most of the men prefer to watch from the sidelines. As a side note, a friend who urges you to wrestle with a bear may not be your friend. Wojtek's behavior was influenced by his peer group, who happened to be war-hardened men with advanced skills in carousing. It's a tough environment for an impressionable young bear. Wojtek adopted their habits and fit right in. He had his own mug that he used to drink beer and wine from, and when it was empty, Wojtek would look mournfully at the cup until it was refilled. He also begged for cigarettes, though he insisted someone lit them before he would accept. Typically, after one puff, Wojtek would swallow it whole. Come to where the flavor is. When the troops arrived in Palestine, they were organized into the 22nd Transport Company, Artillery Division, Polish 2nd Corps. The men, however, would not abandon Wojtek, who was immediately adopted as the company mascot. But it wasn't just a symbolic gesture. Wojtek was part of the team. One evening, while the camp was asleep, a thief crept into the compound looking for something to steal. Unfortunately for him, he awoke Wojtek, who rose to investigate. With a massive brown bear lumbering towards him, the frightened thief, understandably, forgot he was a thief. He made such a clatter that he woke the troops, and he was quickly apprehended. As a reward for his vigilance, Wojtek was given a bottle of beer. "Hey, barkeep, how about a bottle of suds for my furry friend over there?" When he was young, Wojtek traveled with the company from site to site in whatever cab of whatever truck had room. But as Wojtek grew, he tipped the scale at 500 pounds, and it was harder to find any vehicle that had room for him to ride shotgun. So he was upgraded to one of the company's recovery trucks. A recovery truck is like a tow truck, but military-sized and used to move tanks. For Wojtek, it was a traveling home, like an RV built for a bear. He spent his trips lounging on the recovery truck's bed and alleviating his boredom by climbing the crane to get a view of the surroundings. Wojtek wasn't the only animal who accompanied soldiers in the Second World War, although he likely was the only bear on the battlefield. Some animals, like anti-tank dogs, served grim but useful purposes, while others were brought to battle as a mascot. Whenever he encountered other animals, Wojtek was always friendly. The soldiers of the 22nd Transport Company loved to talk about the encounters between Wojtek and Kasia the monkey and Kirkuk the dog, two of the war's most famous animal combatants. Consider them the A-list celebrity animals of the day. Wojtek never suffered a bullet or shrapnel wound, but he did encounter a life-threatening injury. Wojtek was once stung on the nose by a scorpion. Such an injury is often lethal. In fact, his friend Kirkuk the dog succumbed to a scorpion sting. Wojtek's friend Henrik was beside himself. He refused to leave the bear's side, doing all in his power to help nurse Wojtek back to health. For the first day and a half, the situation was critical, and it looked as if Wojtek might not make it. The soldiers feared the worst. But Wojtek fought back, and against all odds, overcame the scorpion's venom. Within days, he was back to his carousing ways. As the 22nd Transport Company received their assignment and was sent to the Italian battlefront in 1943, Wojtek had to be left behind in Palestine due to regulations that prohibited animals in combat. An active war front is typically not an ideal place for a bear, but Wojtek was not a typical bear. To get around the regulation, Wojtek was officially enlisted in the Polish army. He was even given his own paycheck, rank, and serial number. This helped ensure his participation was recorded, and the world knew under which flag Wojtek served. Though there was confusion and likely a bit of aggravation about transporting a bear to the Italian battlefront, the Polish troops eventually got their way. In Italy, there were a series of fortifications known as the Winter Line. In 1944, the Germans held the western portion of that line, and the Allies determined that breaking through that line near a rocky hill known as Monte Cassino would give them access to the Italian capital of Rome. Atop the hill was an abbey that had been converted into a fearsome stronghold. The abbey ultimately withstood 3 assaults before the Allies drove its inhabitants backwards into Rome. During one of these assaults, Wojtek's pal Henrik, serving as an artillery spotter, pulled forward into battle and had to leave his bear friend behind. Left among the men who armed and manned the guns, Wojtek refused to sit idly by. Mimicking the behavior of the soldiers around him, Wojtek began to lift massive crates of ammunition and carry them towards the cannons, disregarding the gunfire and making himself useful throughout the assault. By the time Monte Cassino was in the hands of the Allies, more than 70,000 men on both sides had lost their lives. When the chaos of battle settled, the troops were able to rest, and word of Wojtek's exploits spread. His fearless actions and loyalty in battle made him a hero among the 22nd Transport Company. In honor of Wojtek's deeds, the official seal of the 22nd Transport Company was changed to feature Wojtek marching towards cannon fire, a shell in each hand. The logo was then featured prominently on vehicles, uniforms, and the like. After the war, the 22nd Transport Company moved to rural Scotland, where they were stationed at an airfield near the village of Hutton. The soldiers Wojtek had spent the previous 3 years following into battle were restationed or sent home. One by one, they came to say goodbye to their furry friend. Wojtek's battle adventures were ending, but his time in the spotlight was just beginning. Word spread that there was a Syrian brown bear nearby, and Wojtek became a local celebrity among the Scottish people. He was profiled in stories, visited by locals, and inducted into local organizations such as the Polish-Scottish Association. In 1947, Wojtek left the military. Rising from his initial rank as private, he was discharged as a corporal. He retired to the Edinburgh Zoo. There, he enjoyed a good life as beloved celebrity, doing an occasional interview and appearing on a local children's show from time to time. As the years wore on, Wojtek was never forgotten by his army pals and was visited by Polish soldiers he had served with. As 82-year-old Polish veteran Augustin Karolewski described his reunion with Wojtek, as soon as I mentioned his name, he would sit on his backside and shake his head, wanting a cigarette. Still one of the boys. In the wild, Syrian brown bears live between 20 and 25 years. Wojtek, for all his adventures, lived to a ripe age of 21 and passed away in 1963.